So like I said, this is the last event, and I'm very, very pleased to be able to introduce today to all of you Dr. Camilla Fojas, who comes to us from DePaul University, where she is professor and director of Latin American and Latino Studies. Her main areas of research are cultural film and media studies of the Americas within a comparative perspective that includes Latin America, the Caribbean, the United States, Hawaii, and the Philippines. She is the author of several much lauded books, including Cosmopolitanism in the Americas, Border Bandits, Hollywood on the Southern Frontier, and the award-winning co-edited volume, Mixed Race Hollywood. And in fact, this is one of these great moments where you read someone's scholarship first and then meet them after. And we talk in literature departments about ideal audiences and implied authors a lot, at least in my classes, right? In fact, I came to know the implied author of Camilla Fojas before I met the actual flesh and blood scholar. And that is to say, I was reading Border Bandits over the summer, and I thought, wow, this is an amazing scholar. She writes so well, and she thinks so carefully and clearly about things. And then I had the pleasure of meeting her in person last night when I picked her up at the airport. Border Bandits has been well received. It's one of those books that was quickly pulled up into the academic apparatus and reviewed by a number of journals, and all of them saying only good things. For instance, one said that it's a solid, well-researched exploration of the cultural and historical impact of the Southern frontier in mainstream Hollywood and the ways it has been adapted to genre filmmaking. So, having said all of this, I don't want to take up too much time. On behalf of Laser and the Multicultural Center, Indra, for always being there for us, please join me in welcoming Dr. Camilla Fojas.
Thank you so much. I'm really, really honored to be here. I'd like to thank Frederick for a wonderful introduction to your hospitality, Indra, Sam, everyone who's been so helpful in helping me feel at home. So I want to start with a quote, and this is the quote, you've already sort of seen it. And the reason why I want to start here is I want to point out the importance of Mexico to the United States and its imaginary, and that its importance is really shaped by this notion of danger and drug trafficking and all manner of sort of contraband that gets associated with Mexico. So I'd also like to start with one of the major, or one of the first drug trafficking films, I think, of the Hollywood canon, and that is Touch of Evil. Has anyone seen this? Or heard of it? It's really well known for its opening shot, which is one of the longest tracking shots, I think, in the history of cinema. But the film, I opened with this because I think it set a lot of the tropes and a lot of the metaphors and ideas that really are essential to not just our imaginary of the borderlands, but of border cinema. So in the film, you see that the United States and Mexico are in an absolutely intimate partnership represented by this couple here. It's a mixed-race couple. And what you also have is this family of drug traffickers, the Grandi family, that is, and it's spelled G-R-A-N-D-I, so it's strange spelling of the name. But it's behind this. This family operates a criminal drug network. And it puts into play a series of acts of retribution between, the film does, between this family, this criminal family, and the Mexican police office, or policeman who's a detective who is linked to the United States. So the film starts with a bomb, and the bomb originates in Mexico and then gets put into a car and explodes in the United States. And so the metaphor is pretty obvious, that all things, all manner of danger, all kind of explosive devices originate in Mexico to the detriment of the United States. So the film is set off when the film begins when this bomb is set off on US soil. And in this kind of drug trafficking dynamic, who's the victim in all of this? the blonde wife of the Mexican or mixed race Mexican police officer working for the U.S. She gets, it's so weird. I mean, in the poster you see it's the strangest vengeance ever planned. It is strange. They kidnap her, make her smoke pot or something. and then she's, I don't know, chained to this bed. The reason why I start here, and the reason why I think this is so important is, you know, this is Janet Lee, if you don't recognize her in her state of fear, is that you'll see that so many of the ideas that set up this film, as ludicrous as they are, find their way into traffic. So I start there, and this is not part of the paper, but I just love this quote. So if the United States is so concerned with control of the border and with drug trafficking with Mexico, the fear in the 1980s where this film and a lot of other films comes from or is set in is that the border is not being controlled enough. That the border enforcement, that policemen at the border don't, or enforcement at the border doesn't have enough muscle or other things. So I think this sentiment really also drives traffic. So I just put this in here, but it really doesn't relate as much to the rest of what I'll be talking about. So 10 years have passed since Traffic was released, and the situation at the border has not gotten any better. It's actually only intensified, particularly after the events of 9/11. And our ideas about the border and its inhabitants have in fact worsened. And some of these were played out all over the campaign ads and the midterm elections. You had all of this fear-mongering around the border. And you have things like the war on drugs, the war on terror, and then recently fears about immigration and undocumented immigrants kind of dovetailing in the U.S. imaginary. And Mexico's not just the culprit, but the target of all of this. So the ongoing crisis at the border has been intensified by all this legislation in Arizona and this kind of public mood of immigrant phobia. And well, just as a side note, I really think that the border is always a repository of all of these things, of threatening ideas, of anything that might be deemed unsavory. So you have things, as I was saying before, terrorism, homosexuality, race mixing, fear of open borders that really in the 90s was around NAFTA, which you see a lot in traffic. And of course, the best instantiation of this in traffic, and I don't go into this too much, but maybe we can talk about it later, is the gay psychopath hitman, who's referred to variously as Frankie and Francisco, the guy that Javier lures in the gay bar. I mean, that's the perfect border inhabitant. So he kind of summarizes everything about our notion about border inhabitants in his persona. So to go back to this notion of immigrant phobia, the immigrant phobia is fueled by all of these images of murder and mayhem and violence that is really the direct result of a lot of public discourses. So recently, as you know, Republican Arizona Governor Jan Brewer justified her state's controversial immigration law that she signed on April 23rd of this year, SB 1070, by suggesting that border violence has led to beheadings in the Arizona desert. Did anyone hear about this? So she said, she gave her statements to Fox News on June 16th, and she said, we can't afford all of this illegal immigration and everything that comes with it. Everything from the crime and to the drugs and the kidnappings and the extortion and the beheadings and the fact that people can't feel safe in their community. It's wrong, it's wrong. She says it twice. So the Republican governor stood by her beheading claim against claims to the contrary, especially when she was questioned during an interview on Phoenix NBC affiliate, KPNX 12 News, and she was questioned on June 25th this year. And she said, oh, our law enforcement agencies have found bodies in the desert, either buried or just lying there, and they've been beheaded. So according to Dr. Eric Peters, who's a deputy chief medical examiner for Pima County, which is the largest area of border with Mexico, of any county in Arizona,